What's up, y'all? I'm Max from Splice content team, and today we're going to do a quick tour of our studio space at Sound Factory, the iconic studio space here in Hollywood, California. So hope you enjoy. It's very secret. Whoa.
Welcome to Sound Factory.
There he is.
I'm Cameell, I'm the studio manager here. This is the 1960s side of Sound Factory. Its oldest dates we've been able to trace is from the 1950s. This is the kitchen we just redid. This is not an original area, but the lounge is actually all original. So the crazy story with Sound Factory's lounge is it used to be the Righteous Brothers office. So like all of this was where they kind of planned out all of their record label items and distributed a bunch of famous songs. And over the years, it kind of got turned into the main lounge, and it's kind of flipped over a bunch of different vibes, but they basically stopped updating it in the 70s and we kind of left it as it is. All the artists that we've been working with, never wanted to have it changed. Before Splice was here, it was Mark Ronson's studio, and he's kind of like a custodian of history, and he really just didn't want to do any changes. So we got used to it and people fell in love with it, so it's kind of got its original flavor.
And anytime you walk in here and see like all these records, there's a real sense of history. Even if we're not actually making records here, it's cool to just know that you're standing in the same space that Linda Ronstadt was at some point. Or, you know, I don't know, Oingo Boingo is one I like because I like the name of that band a lot.
I mean, since the 1960s, like this peaceful kind of getaway for people. Here, let's check out the studio.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
There's all sorts of celebrities hanging around.
Oh my goodness, is that John Grant? Oh my God.
So this is the original 1960s side of the building. We try to keep it as original as possible. The live rooms are 100% original. The control room has changed a bunch over the years, and this layout was Mark Ronson's original kind of need because he wanted a lot of floor space and he had a lot of outboard gear. So we kind of kept with it after Mark left, and we've done a bunch of different upgrades. This is a collab we did. These large format main speakers were designed by George Oxberger, who's kind of a legendary studio figure and speaker designer, and they were a collaboration between him and Gibson, who owns KRK. So that was a fun thing. This is the first of its kind, really, or at least they're totally unique to this place. So Splice has kind of one of each of these speakers. This room can be used as a recording space, but it can also just be used as a total sound processing lab. So there's tons of, like, from different eras, there's lots of processing tools, lots of equalizers, lots of compressors, lots of cool digital units, synthesizers, everything that you might want as a creator to kind of come in and,
for sure,
and sculpt.
Over here we have kind of our like preamp sort of section. These are actually custom.
This is a cool story.
Yes,
so these are part of a batch of prototypes that we bought from Sunset Sound. They made a module named after their original owner, 2D Camerata. And now these are distributed. You can buy these in storage, but these are the prototypes that like they built that off of. I know this is true because I've seen it. I went to the Disney campus.
Yeah.
I used to go there a lot because we did a lot of business with their company. And inside the campus, there's a big conference room area called the 2D Camerata conference area.
Wow.
So he was Walt Disney's engineer way back in the day.
Wow.
And he built Sunset Sound based off of that like original pitch to Walt Disney that, hey, I want to build a studio in Hollywood. Do it with me. And he says, do it yourself, but I will feed you a bunch of stuff. And they did Cinderella and tons of hugely famous records there in the early Disney days. So he was this beloved arranger, studio guy, and this was like their tribute to him, his dad.
These
really are the prototypes
really cool.
that ended up becoming the unit that they have out, and we love them. They have a lot of personality.
Yeah, definitely. Over here we have the Manly ELOP. How do you say that? ELOP Plus? I don't know. It's pole backwards. I don't know if that makes any difference or not, or like why they decided to. You know, we thought maybe like one LA2A would be good, and then we thought probably two LA2As would be like really cool. And they were like, all right, well, what's cooler than two LA2As? 3 LA2As. So I don't really know if we actually need all three, but I think we've used all three before in sessions, so sure, we need that. We have the standard audio level or this is the APA Leviathan optical compressor. This thing I really, really love, especially on like vocals, it's very transparent. And then the API 550B EQs. This I don't know, but it looks fucking sick. I mean, what is this, like a bank vault combination or something? Model RMX 16 Advanced Music Systems. That doesn't help at all.
It's an amazing
Sweet
recreation of a classic digital reverb.
Nice.
And it's got a lot of famous presets, so you can kind of like dial those presets in. You can also modify them.
Yeah.
We tried to set up the room with like just a ton of processing tools for the different creators that come in, because they want stuff that they can't necessarily get at their house.
Sure.
So like, though there are plug-in versions of a lot of these things, there is something kind of wild and interesting about the originals, especially when you're kind of pairing them with different gear. So a lot of the tools that you see on the desktop surface will rotate around. Like on the top of that, this is something that's floating in from our collection. This is like this classic old Shure battery-powered preamp compression unit. And it's from the 80s, maybe early 90s, and it's got a certain texture and a certain sound, and when you're making a pack, you want to be able to reach for a lot of different flavors.
Through the Matrix system, but if you want to plug in your laptop or whatever, you use the Apollo. And then, yeah, Mac Studio display, KRK monitors, Profits here for now, but whatever keyboard the artist is comfortable with, we'll sub it in. And that's the control room. So let's go around and look at the live rooms where we actually record the samples.
Yeah, this is the original like machine room area for the studio. These are all Elco connectors for what used to be all the tape machines that are in this hall. And sometimes we'll get artists and people that want to bring tape machines in. I think Israel from Sample Magic did that once, and you can patch right in. So this is the untouched original live room space to Sound Factory circa 1960. So it definitely still has that spirit and feel. We brought new lighting in, but nothing else has changed. The flooring's the same, the paneling, everything is as it was. You can actually find a lot of this in a book that they published called Lawyers, Guns, and Photos about Warren Zevon's record that he did here.
That's fun.
And there's tons of amazing pictures of, like in this room, you'll see people up against this and people up against the pegboard in there. Linda Ronstadt, Jackson Browne, members of the Eagles, like lots of really kind of classic LA session players are in that book too. It's a cool look at a decade that, they had a lot of action in this room for. The 70s was like a big decade for this room. Yeah. I guess they all have kind of had their moments, but a lot of the recognizable songs are from like the 1960s and 1970s in this room. Like we're going to go into this live room portion, and Jackson 5's I Want You Back was done in there in its entirety, vocals, production, everything was done in one day. You've got Marvin Gaye's What's Going On album was done there.
Wow.
All the vocals, all the rewrites, all the sort of lyrics that you associate with that classic record, that was all done in here. And it had a crazy 80s invasion too. Like if you're looking for records that everybody in America probably knows, you've got Walk Like an Egyptian was done here.
Unreal.
Manic Monday, Weird Science, Don't Dream It's Over, Hey Mickey. Those were all done in this room. And I don't know, I feel like when you get an artist in here, they always ask the same question. I've probably been asked this 100 times, like, what happened here? They all ask that, and then they're like, oh, I knew it. Like there's something that resonates with them. Right. And the Splice creators are the same. I
like to think the sound waves are still like bouncing around.
There's something, acoustics are, an acoustician told me this once, they said, acoustics are one part science, one part witchcraft. So, there might be a little bit of sorcery at
There we go. How about the plate?
So this is the original plate from here. There was a large collection of these when Sunset Sound was here because they had one for each of the rooms. But we since changed the setup and we only needed one. But this is, as our interns say, it's a real life plug-in.
Right.
Arturia makes a very good clone of this, but this is the real thing. And it's got it's got a lot of history. It's basically on every major vocal that was done here. If you're looking for like more recent things, you got Nothing Breaks Like a Heart from Mark Ronson this was used. Dua Lipa's Electricity.
Most packs, I think we did.
A lot of packs.
Yeah.
Killer for drum reverb.
And I really love just twisting this wheel. I mean, this is the best.
It's all mechanical, so
thing,
you're
man.
changing the reverb times
I feel like I'm
by
a ship,
adjusting it.
you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Like just
Sonic ship captain.
steering on the open. Anyway, I won't fuck it up. Thank you to our friends at Arturia for the Keylab 88 and the Polybrute here. Also, the Jupiter X is an iconic synth. So, these rotate in and out sometimes, but it's nice to have this like amazing little keys area. Yamaha U1 upright and 88 key Stage Rhodes Mark 1. Do you know when this is from, Camille?
76, I believe.
Very nice. I don't really know much about the kit.
Well, these are all the historic locations. So for kits, like a lot of different kits float in and out of here. This is just one of the house kits. It's a 1970s Blue Sparkle Slingerland. And we wanted to just have instruments around that you would probably have seen around the time that people were making records in the heyday here. So it's like that smaller kind of tight drum sound that you associate with the 70s. A lot of those tight drum sounds and records like Seals and Cross records and things like that, those were done here. So a lot of that sound is associated with this room and that softer kind of feel. So we kept with that. But for Splice, there's a galaxy of different kits that come in. But this is typically the area that they're in. As far back as we could trace it, we met with a lot of the original engineers and people that were still around. They said this was always the corner, this was the best spot. And if you look around the room, you can kind of see it's an L-shaped live room. So everywhere you stand, essentially, you're going to be able to see another player. So this was designed for these sections in mind. So a lot of the positions, they make sense for being able to have the rhythm section players see each other.
Right.
And we've always used it like that. Like even the area over here, this is like where most of the Splice feature artists will come in, kind of set up their instruments. And we've done a galaxy of different things with this area, but this was historically where all the artists would stand. So you'll see some videos that we can link up of Linda Ronstadt singing right in front of this glass. You'll see pictures of Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, way back, doing sort of vocal takes and things all in this area. So this is kind of obviously it's the best line of sight, but it's also just it's kind of got a magic to it. And this is a more live room than our other studios here. There's 3 other studios here, just because of the classic kind of harder flooring and the surfaces being the way that they are. And I think that liveness makes its way into a lot of these Splice recordings and gives it some energy.
Definitely. It's really fascinating to know that people have been standing here cutting records for 50 years, man. I mean,
yeah, a lot of artists that come through, they're super sensitive.
Sure.
By nature. So we're all from the East Coast, so we had some East Coast musicians over here, the guys from Aerosmith and Steven, who we've worked with for a long time on and off in different ways. Big Linda Ronstadt fan. And he's I want to know exactly where she stood, what mic. And what's cool is we actually know where she stood. We had the mic still. We had all of the original stuff. So he could actually look at, this is the 67 she used, and here's a video for using that same 67. It's pretty cool to have the original mic locker here. And it gets used on all these different recordings. And still, we're talking about 1950s tech essentially being used on the stuff we do now.
Yeah, for sure.
We've been using for a long time. The mic locker here even has classical ribbon microphones that are these giant sort of things you would associate with classic radio. And those get used on instruments in different ways.
Yeah, nice.
It's been fun to kind of expose a newer generation of creators to these things that they're I got to plug into that.
I see that on Splice Rent to Own.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, and then for guitar amps and different elements here, the idea is to just have as many options as possible. Players will bring things in. There's a ton of different things in the house since this place is made up of a lot of guitar players. And a lot of our road gear and things from our careers here. So there's just a lot of options, from really clean amplifiers to the stuff with a ton of personality to there's like little, there's like a smaller Supro amp like that, like these are all just different textures that people can reach for. And, those personality traits, having them really close by is huge for the players because they can just try stuff instead of settling for something else.
There's something different about recording a shitty amp. Not that that's shitty, but like recording a shitty amp in a nice room makes it sound very intentional, right? It's like, why did you clearly chose to do that instead of, me just recording my shitty amp in my shitty room. Then everyone's like, wow, this sucks.
Well, that's the idea behind this with Splice, is they, being able to supply creators with tools that they can't have in their bedroom, not just the gear, but like, we're going to go see the wood room, which is kind of like, it's a storage space with tall ceilings, but I think they have always used it like this. We certainly have some in our tenure where it's essentially a reverb chamber. And so we'll mic this room behind you for elements that are happening in here. So like for almost all the drum tracking we do, certain acoustics, if they're loud enough, vocal sections, things like that, we'll mic this acoustic space, and it's like this incredible extension of the sound. And depending on how you mic it, you can almost get like a slapback type signal out of it. And it's like, cool. You can't do that at your house in the same way. You can technically do it, but there's just something with the texture of all of these things that just, these spaces, there's a magic to it. And every time we do it, we're like, God, that sounds good.
Yeah.
And we just did a pack with Jacopo, who is
a
drummer for Post Malone. And I think we utilized this room heavily just to have the aggressiveness in those sounds, like really having the chaos of a real room splashing around.
Right.
So we've got a big old synth collection here. All of us were players at one point in time. So we've just got stuff from all different decades. And you get a really interesting cross-section of creators that come in and go, because there's a list that they can see what's available. I really need to see the MS-2000. And like, how do you know what the MS-2000 is?
Yeah.
But, there's flavors that they're familiar with because we're all obsessed with sound in one way, shape, or form. And they come in really like, I need the 90s sound. And we go, okay, I know exactly what you need. And we can kind of bring out the different drum machines or synths and kind of help them connect it and process it. And that's where a lot of this stuff comes in. There's racks and racks of this stuff throughout the studio.
Hope you enjoyed this tour of our studio space at Sound Factory. We take a lot of pride in how we make our sounds, and we hope that shows through in every sample. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned to the Splice YouTube page for more.